This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Manici.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. And some people, Jay, some people are saying that we have some new union members that we need to introduce.
Well, those people are right.
I've bundled them all together in a cable-like package. For those of you who still have cable, you're getting both your HG TV and your Discovery all in one here. So we need to welcome to the union Ian Wobble. I think Ian was actually a patron before.
Yes, he suggested many albums.
Yeah,
He's been
okay.
part of the community for a long time. Yeah,
there you go. Kimbleton, also known as Kim Bowie, who was like someone who was suggesting albums when we were doing the PayPal.
Yep. Old school. Yeah,
old school. I think Kim Bowie suggested like Spiderbait. That might have been one of his picks.
So. Yep.
Tanya Richardson, welcome to the union. Tanya has been active on our Discord already. Love it.
Very cool.
And Marv. I was hoping it was maybe Marv Levy, but it's not. It's okay.
Is Marv Levy still alive?
Yes, he's still alive.
Oh my goodness.
He's still alive and kicking. He's like 97 years old. For those who don't know, that's the Buffalo Bills coach from when they went to the Super Bowl 4 times. Personal hero, has the single greatest insult in the history of football when he disagreed with a call and he called the official an over-officious jerk.
Really cuts.
Really cut. You over-officious jerk. He was known for having
Buffalo thing ever.
Yeah, he was known for having a very big vocabulary, and also being a big World War II nerd. A lot of his locker room speeches involved like Patton and stuff like that.
As they should.
So, yes, exactly. Welcome to the union, all of our new folks. Happy to have you with us. Happy to have you as a part of the community. But we also have on this episode a returning member. He's been here so many times before, we've lost track of it. Eric Peterson, how are you?
Hello. Glad to be here.
Eric, this is your 79th appearance. No, I don't know how many times.
Something like that.
Honestly, it's probably in the 50s at this point.
About twice a year. Yeah.
And then also all the round tables and various things. I'm guessing it's probably in the 40s or 50s at this point. I need to do an official tally. Also, that doesn't even count like suggestions that you made that have been picked over the years for polls and for old episodes. So the hand of Eric reaches deep into the crevices of the Dig Me Out DNA.
Whoa. That's a little too graphic there.
That got weird.
It did get weird. I didn't know where to go with that.
The official tally I got here is 21.
That doesn't seem possible. That seems too low.
Starting with 2015 influential bands of the 90s was the first episode I have.
Okay. Well, I'm going to need to audit our record keeping because it just seems
good
off.
Luck with that.
Yeah. We haven't kept any official records. So this is like
our official records are the website. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. We should probably take this more seriously at some point after 14 years. So, Eric, you've brought to us a wide variety of interesting records. What do you have for us for 2024?
All right. Well, usually I do my picks in October, but due to the fact that the Dig Me Out 80s focused on hard rock and metal is sort of new and people are excited about it, it was like when Tim contacted me and said, "Are we ready to do a pick?" I was like, "Yeah, we'll do mine now." And my pick is the 1999 album by the band The Hookers called Black Visions of Crimson Wisdom.
Now let me explain. I rejiggered
I know.
our Patreon picks so they actually match up with the month in which people joined because of time over time things have gotten out of whack. Wanted to make sure I got that back in line. So, and we had you special doing Halloween episodes for a couple years.
Yes.
So this realigns the planets and the stars are now realigned correctly. I have reached down like the hand of God and placed them in the proper places.
Are you quoting Temple of the Dog now?
I don't know. Am
Reach
I?
down.
Reach down and pick the crowd up. Anyway,
Oh,
He reached down and copied and pasted the text.
I learned
there you
something.
go.
Real quick side note on Temple of the Dog's album. Mike McCready has a solo on one of the songs, and apparently when he was recording the solo, his headphones went out, so he just kept playing because he knew what the key of the song was, and he just kept soloing, and they ended up keeping it, even though he was not listening to the song at all. I don't know which
Nice.
song it is. I have to look it up, but that's crazy.
Sometimes it might be better to do sometimes when you're soloing.
I guess so. Can you give us a little how did you discover this band? When was that sort of thing?
Oh, wow. So I'm sure that I stumbled upon them because they were part of that late 90s high energy rock and roll scene with bands like the Helicopters, Electric Frankenstein, the Bell Rays. And I think they showed up on the Fistful of Rock and Roll compilations. And I saw this record and I picked it up. I think it was a bit of a buzz in the group of people I know that were involved in that scene. I do know that for a lot of people, or maybe more like a few people, this is the album by this band. They enjoy their other records, but this one, as my friend Tom Bagley said to me last fall, this one they just kind of captured a magic of energy and channeling the kind of 70s hard rock that was really missing from the landscape of that late 90s.
Jay, had you ever heard of the Hookers?
I remember the name. I never heard the band though. I mean, I was into that. I'm still into a lot of those bands. Heard some of the compilations and stuff. So I would hear, even if I didn't know the albums, I was still hearing, pieces of different bands. But no, I don't remember hearing them. The name sounds familiar though. Had you heard them, Tim?
No, I had not. And so this was completely new for me. Let's get into some history of this band, which I thank you, Eric, for sending links.
History of the band.
So searching hookers on Google can get a little troublesome. I'll just say
I don't need
that.
you to go to marriage counseling over something that I suggest you listen to. Not so for that reason, at least.
Yeah. So they formed in Louisville, Kentucky in 1994, or Lexington, sorry, but they were based in Louisville. They were originally called the Fayette County Hookers, and then they released it, or they shortened it to just the Hookers. Their first release was the 1996 7-inch EP "Kiss My Fucking Ass."
Subtle.
Very subtle. Then their first full length came out. Well, they had a couple more. They had a couple more 7-inches for various labels. And then their first album, Satan's Highway, came out on Scooch Pooch Records in 1998. That was followed by a split CD with Electric Frankenstein called Listen Up Baby. That was released on Man's Ruin Records, which is the San Francisco label. The album we're talking about, Black Visions of Crimson Wisdom. Crimson Wisdom is a tough, that's like the sixth. It's messing with my mouth.
Tongue twister.
Yeah, that was released in 1999, also on Scooch Pooch. I believe Scooch Pooch put out like bands like Zeke and some other artists.
When I saw them live after this album came out, they were touring with Zeke.
Okay. Some more 7-inches, lots of 7-inches by this band on various labels. They did do a Sub Pop single of Deep Purple. It was Deep Purple and Crocus covers of Highway Star and Ready to Burn. That was released in 2000. They released a live album, Blood Over Germany, in 2001. More 7-inches. A live and unreleased album called Ripped from the Crypt in 2008. It sounds like they were kind of inactive at that point. I'm not sure what there was like a break or something. Maybe that was before that, but some more 7-inches were released. And that's kind of what I've seen up until 2014. It's Midnight, The Witching Hour. Is that the last? Is that an EP or an album? Do you know, Eric?
I think it's an album because I think I have that one. It's not particularly super memorable, but
Got it.
I've got it. So.
Oh, and then
Yeah.
there was also Horror Rises from the Tombs on Green Mist Records in 2011.
I think that might be the one that I have. I have one or two of
Okay.
those.
You have a lot of 7-inches, like split 7-inches with other bands and ones of their own. And then there's a compilation called Casting the Runes from the Battle of Clontarf to the Gates of Valhalla.
Wow. That sounds epic.
Yeah, it does. That was on Devil Doll Records in 2005. So yeah, their Discogs page has quite a few releases for a band that we did not know. So interestingly, the band was formed by Adam Neal, aka the Rock and Roll Outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Neal is also in a band called the Glass Pack, which I have 2 of their records on MP3s of their records. Must have picked them up in the 2000s via some file sharing or something like that. And then there's a lot of members of this band.
So can we talk about Adam Neal for just a moment?
Yeah.
There's 2 other important 90s bands that he was in. One was called 9 Pound Hammer, which was a high energy kind of bluesy alt rock band. And the band that grew out of that was Nashville Pussy, which he was also involved with for a while.
Okay. So for this album, and I mentioned there's a lot of members of this band, you have Adam Neal singing. On lead guitar, you have Stony Toombs. On second guitar, Blizzard of Haas, also known as Chris Hosner. The drummer is Chris Hamilton. And where's the bass guitarist?
The bass player is credited as Tom A. Foolery III.
They don't on the Discogs page. They don't list a bass player.
So I'm looking at the Discogs page for that.
Oh, I was looking at the CD. I got it. Yeah. Real name Wes Keller. Tom A. Foolery. Nice. Blizzard of Haas.
It's a pretty decent rock and roll name, but okay, Tom Foolery.
He could have been Wes Killer.
Right.
It was right there.
It's right there in front of him.
Wes the Killer. The Killer, whatever. That's all right. That's fine. And so this was produced by Adam Neal and Noel Rucroft, who is that's Stony, I believe. And they describe their sound as the thunder of Blue Cheer, the speed of Motorhead, and the teachings of Anton LaVey. Okay. And they still have a Facebook page. I don't know if it's active, but
they were actually touring a little bit last fall. my friend Tom Bagley from the band Forbidden Dimension, who I mentioned earlier, spoke highly of this album. When I saw him in Nashville, he was actually going to be seeing them like 2 nights later, but I think their tour fell apart. But so I know they've done something recently.
Gotcha.
And I also do know that Adam Neal currently plays in the band Savage Master, which is a fairly well thought of current metal band. So,
oh, interesting. Yeah, he's got a lot of credits on his individual Discogs page,
yeah,
for various bands, and it looks like Savage Master's been around for quite a few years. So, and I mentioned he was in the Glass Pack, and he was in a band called Dragon's Kiss, Brothers of Conquest, Blade of the Ripper.
So Brothers of Conquest, BOC, as in Blue Oyster Cult.
Let's go over to our Patreon page. We'll share the poll results at the end of this episode. But let's get some comments in. Kyle Bittner said, I wish I had a muscle car because throwing this on and putting the pedal to the metal just doesn't have the same meaning in a Nissan Rogue. Still, though, this album is a gut punch of good time rock and roll thrash, 100% worthy album. That's pretty good. Also, I agree. This did not fly in my Kia Sorento as well as it would have.
Well, you know why?
Why?
You don't have a tape deck in there.
It's true.
Or a graphic EQ.
I mean, really, if you're going to be in the muscle car, this should have been on an 8-track, right?
True.
Yeah. And I think actually this is more of a van than a muscle car. This is like a 70s van.
Yes.
You open the door and smoke billows out type of thing. Gavin, Big Dumb Rock. I like it. Worthy album. I still prefer whores to hookers. Okay. That's a personal. Now the other side. Ian McIver. The streak continues, he says. Decent single. This has been a rough year for Ian. We gotta send him a get well soon card or something.
He needs to drink more crappy beer and sit in his garage for a while, I think.
Yeah. And then Justin Moore said, for me, the litmus test on whether it'll make it to a second spin on most albums are the vocals, and this just doesn't do it for me, I'm afraid. Very bland and basic melodies, which follow a very similar pattern from song to song. For me, a tad annoying in tone and delivery. The music fares a bit better, but again, for me, once you've heard one tune, you've heard them all. Decent single. So very split comments. Let's see how the voting shakes out at the end of this episode. But Jay, let's get into it. Tell me one thing you liked about Black Visions of Crimson Wisdom by the Hookers.
Compared to some of the other bands, their peers, so this action rock, high energy rock sound of the late 90s, early 2000s, the thing that I enjoyed and really worked for me on this was they're mixing in some different elements. One is there's a tinge of new wave of British heavy metal in here. So there's a classic metal approach to some of the riffs, even parts of riffs that then morph into, different styles. But they're certainly there. You hear it right away on the opening riff of Behold God's Candy. heard on Ball Crusher Love Machine, which half of that riff that starts the song sounds like Iron Maiden, and the other half is blues, like a blues progression, which is kind of bonkers, but like they make it work. Another example would be Into Glory Ride. It's got that heavy classic metal feel in the guitar riff. And then there's another shade of this band where, you know, they're playing off of that, but then they'll flip and sort of lean into the blues sludgy, but the blues riffs, but they'll do like a sludgy boogie kind of feel. So that's where you start to hear some of the action rock tendencies come in. And I think what's cool about that is you could also hear some of that stuff getting into more of a stoner rock feel if the drummer would maybe play in halftime and they'd groove it out more. But because everything is really pushing high energy, faster tempos, it takes on this other kind of unique sound. So it's kind of playing with similar guitar style riffs and even vocals, but because I think the way the drums approach it, it feels a little bit more like New Bomb Turks than, you know, a stoner rock band like Caius or something like that. Or so Maximum Overdrive is a good example of that. Black Magic Stallion is another example. Who Will Survive? I think the last thing is within these, you know, this is all wrapped around pretty straightforward pop songwriting. These are very short songs. They're all under 3.5 minutes, I think. They're pretty straightforward. There's a couple middle sections that, you know, have some guitar solos in them that meander a little bit, but they're pretty tight structured songs, verse, chorus, verse. Some have pre-choruses. And within there's, I think, a pretty solid sense of melody. But I think what elevates it, or at least makes it unique, is this vocal delivery that's, you know, just this shredded, high intensity vocal. It's really aggressive, but then also has some Glenn Danzig kind of sensibilities for melodies. So you've just got like these pop songs that are then kind of just gasoline fueled, intense, like blowing in your face, which gives everything this unique sound, right? So you just, when you put the record on, you heard some of the comments, like there is a sound to this band and it's consistent through the whole thing. There is a style in terms of the songwriting, but then as you sort of break things down, you realize they're pulling from all of these different influences that some, you know, a lot of other bands have pulled from, but the way they're putting them together is, at least to my ears, you know, pretty unique at times, and differentiates them from most of the other bands that I can think of from that era. Even though I could see them playing, you know, shows with them, they're not quite the same as like a Lucifer, or they're not quite the same as a Helicopters, or, you know, they're definitely carving their own niche in here. So that's what worked for me. How about you, Tim? What worked?
Well, I don't have the same background when it comes to metal that you do. So my initial impression was, oh, this is like this. I guess this is like thrash. I guess this is a thrash record. And then as I listened to it, Mark, and started actually like reading, because I didn't want to like prejudice myself by reading a bunch before I listened to it. And then I read it, and there was like oh, this is punk. Oh, okay. I guess I didn't think of that this would be punk. So then I started to listen to it with that in mind. So when I heard a song like Ride the Dragon to the Crimson Light, I go, oh, okay, this kind of has a early Helicopter Super Shitty to the Max kind of feel, with that, oh, the way that those, like, everything is like in the red on that album, and the guitars are super distorted, and he's doing a lot of screaming, as opposed to where they kind of streamline their sound on the next record. So I started to get a better grip of, like, okay, what are they doing? How does this connect to action rock when this is not necessarily a straight up metal album like I was thinking? And I noticed that the songs were short too. I'm like, well, this isn't metal. These songs are too short. Where's the instrumental breakdown with the finger picked classical guitar? Like, this doesn't, there's something missing here. You know what I mean? Like, where's the double guitar leads and the I was just, when I realized the things that weren't there, I started to go, oh, okay, now I get this. So like you, I love that these songs are so concise and just punch you in the face really fast and then run. And then another one comes, and I have no idea what he's singing for the most part until you get to the chorus. But I was listening to this on Amazon Music, and every song is marked explicit. I'm like, I don't know what he's saying that's explicit, but it's nice that they mark them all. Because I'm not going to play this when the kids are around. But I really liked the energy of this record. And like you, I heard when you mentioned Caius, I was like, oh yeah, there's some of the sludgier, they're not necessarily slow songs, but they have a little bit more thickness to the tone, based on whatever the notes that they're playing. I definitely picked up on that and like that. It's just a weird experience to be confused, thinking like, oh, this is a metal album, and then going, oh wait, these guys aren't. They're not like, the cover looks like this is a black metal album from, Scandinavia. Like, that guy's got this menacing. I don't know if he's got like spikes on his forearms or not, but I'm just like looking at it going, okay, this is a scary band. This would have scared me in Catholic school, and I would have, run away from it. But I do really like the energy of this record, the fact that they don't let up, and it's not even 30 minutes long. It just barrel through this thing as fast as possible, and that to me feels like absolutely perfect. I also like that the guitar solos are not necessarily super proficient. Like, sometimes it's just a big note that the guy's just bending or making noise and stuff, as opposed to a Yngwie style shredding guitar solo. I feel like the noisier guitar solos actually make more sense, because this isn't straight up metal. This has a punk, hardcore crossover, whatever you want to label it as. That to me makes sense, that there would be more basic leads and guitar solos, even though the riffs themselves are really interesting, and some of them are super fast, and I can't play as fast as they're playing on some of these songs. I mean, it's really impressive. So that's some of the stuff I liked. Eric, you brought this to us. What works for you on this record?
So there's a couple things. I like the energy. That's the biggest thing. This is the kind of record that, for me, you had a bad day at work and you just want to scream along with something in the car on the way home. This is that energy. It's driving, but it never gets overloaded for me, and it doesn't sound like one long song either. There's enough breakup of, it's not really tempo as much as there's a couple places where it downshifts. And to me, I always think of this as being Motorhead meets Black Sabbath, both of which are like major punk influences, but major, obviously, hard rock metal influences.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a couple of guitar solos that are very much like early Sabbath, Tony Iommi, kind of real just fuzzy sounding pieces that give you a break from that full throttle energy. As far as the vocals go, I also think that the vocals do provide a drive that I don't usually hear in other bands, because melodically they're driving the song along with the instrumentation. Yeah, I can't understand half of what he's saying, but the choruses are the kind of things that I find, singing along with in the car. And this is very much, in my mind, a car record. This is not something I want, have a glass of wine and fold laundry with. But
You
yeah,
throw the glass against the wall.
That energy, kind of makes you want to my mind, pump your fist or tap your foot, or get pulled over for speeding, kind of a thing. I think additionally that when I was listening to it this time, and I've listened to this record a lot over the years, that I definitely also picked up on that kind of groove, that kind of boogie melodic part to it that you don't necessarily hear in, say, a DRI record or something like that. So I was also thinking a little bit of Corrosion of Conformity when I was listening to it. And I think that's that Southern element that comes in. We talked about Adam Neal coming out of 9 Pound Hammer, being from Kentucky. So there's definitely just a hint of that Southern rock kind of boogie groove in this. And I think all of those elements on this record especially are mixed in such a way that they create this cohesive driving record that's extremely listenable if you're in the right frame of mind, in the right setting. And it's also a ton of fun live. You can just imagine what the live shows are like, if this energy on a good night, when this energy is feeding to an audience that's receptive to these sounds.
One band that came to mind, Jay, I don't know if you remember this band. They're called Early Man.
Yeah.
They were a metal band in the early 2000s that sounded like they came out of a different, like, they clearly understood metal, but you could tell that, like, maybe they were in a punk band, maybe they were in some other band before it, but it reminded me of that band where they were like, oh, they're doing stuff that nobody's really touching on now.
They had like early Metallica kind of angle to some of their stuff, right?
Yeah, and Judas Priest and all the like the new wave, British new wave bands, not new wave, but new wave of British heavy metal. I don't know what happened to them. They were actually from Ohio. They were from Columbus, and then they moved to Brooklyn or something. Because everybody moved to Brooklyn in the 2000s. So in terms of what doesn't work, Jay, what doesn't work for you?
The extreme veneer of the vocals. There's a lot of open cymbals on this record and a lot of layered fuzz. And that just means there's just a lot of ambient like stuff going on. There's just a layer of intensity that is great. I think I agree on the energy part, but it does make it hard to get to the meat of the song sometimes. I think there's several tracks here where it just took me time to repeated listens to really get like, oh, that chorus is really cool. I didn't quite hear that the first time I listened to it, but now, a couple listens in, now I'm able to kind of get to it because I was just hearing the volume and the intensity at first. And I think the other aspect of that is that tracks that are just average, that this presentation doesn't for me. So there's some bands where they can have average material, but because there's something just magical about the way they play or present it or produce it or whatever. Like a long list of reasons why. They can kind of elevate songs that aren't incredible and make them really compelling to listen to. I think there's a couple tracks on this record that songs are meh, and then you just kind of get this intense overlay on top of a meh song, and really doesn't do anything to help it. So I struggled a little bit with like liking the presentation, but then at other points wishing it was, in particular, maybe the singer just had like another range to him. Like he could do, like in some of these choruses, maybe there was like a different place he could go, or different way to deliver the melody. Because as I listened to it, I'm like, oh, that's in there. Like I get it. Like that's a really cool hook. But it took me 5 listens to really understand it and kind of grab onto it, underneath all of the fuzz and distortion and cymbals and stuff. So that's been my biggest issue with the record and what doesn't work. Anything not work for you, Tim?
Same. It really, it's the vocals, and it could have been so easy to fix. It just needed, like you say, he just needed a second gear. Not that he has to get louder or faster or anything, but like the verse melodies are almost interchangeable from song to song. When he gets to the chorus, he usually comes up with something interesting. Like in Black Magic Stallion, he says the line and he's like, well, oh. And I was like, oh, I need more of that. Like, give me more of those little bits of personality. He throws them in every once in a while, but you could clearly tell that the choruses are a little bit more thought out. And that just the tone of his vocal, I agree with Justin. It's like, it just is like, it's a little too repetitive. And when you brought up Caius, I was thinking like John Garcia from Caius could do like the weirder, slower stuff, and then could also do the fast stuff and mix it up with his vocal. And I liked, like, he's gruff. He's got like a gruff vocal approach. And I wonder what like it would have sounded like if he was singing over some of these songs as opposed to Adam Neal. Not that I wouldn't want to get rid of him completely, but it just like almost needed a second singer in the band to trade songs back and forth, so I didn't have to hear basically the same delivery song after song after song. But musically, I really enjoyed a lot of this record. I do agree with you. Like, there's a lot of like, just that sizzle that happens when the cymbals are just constantly getting slapped.
He's always playing the hi-hat open, and there's like one part of one song where he goes to the ride part of the bell part of the ride, which calms things down. I'm like, ooh, do more of that. Because like now I can hear what the band is doing, and like, but it didn't last more than 10 seconds.
Right. Eric, is there anything that doesn't work for you on this record?
So what it sounds like you guys are saying is the production maybe that is the issue here with as far as the mixing goes.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't know if that's a drummer preference or if it's a mix issue.
Okay. I think it's a little both. Like, I think the drummer's playing super aggressive. I want that on this record. Probably could be mixed a little bit differently to let the vocal come out. There could be a very well, like the performances on this record might be just fine. It might be just a matter of like just mixing it different so I can hear the songs a little easier. It's just hard to get to the songs for me.
So there's nothing that really stands out. I do agree that there's a lot of noise on this record, and that's, to me, sounds like a production or a mixing or a recording issue maybe. Also, this is going to be a record coming out on a small label, probably recorded fairly quickly. So I do take that into account. And yeah, I agree that the vocals could be a little more dynamic and have a little more difference. You mentioned Danzig earlier, maybe a crooning here or there or something that's just a little bit different. But, overall, as far as within the context of the kind of record this is, that doesn't really bother me as much. And also, if you think about this record as also being on vinyl. So you have a side 1 and a side 2 that are just, 15 minutes. And then you get up and you change the record or you flip the tape and you come back for another 15 minutes. There's a natural break in there with that kind of a setup that I think gets missed when we're streaming or listening on CD. So, yeah, those are little things to me. Like I said, I do agree that there's maybe a little bit more noise and the mixing could put the vocals up a little more. A lot of records from this era, I always felt like you need to mix the guitars down 1 number and the vocals and the bass up 2, because there's a tendency in a lot of bands from this scene in this era for the guitarist to be mixed way high and everything else lower.
Yeah.
The bass is
just fixed that with their revisited version of Grande Rock.
Yeah.
Like you can actually hear the bass and the drums.
Right. The bass is pretty locked in with what the guitars are doing on this record. You don't hear a lot of variation. He's not doing a lot of runs or going off on his own. I mean, but again, it's also the speed too. I mean, you're playing like Motorhead speed.
Motorhead's a great touchstone because, famously Lemmy's voice is not super dynamic, but he was able to carry these kinds of songs and maybe be a little more, give them I don't want to say personality, a little more dynamic, but he was also the bass player. So he was also, driving that part of their music.
He also sang in a lot of ways very clearly, even though he had a very gruff, again, that word, like he gargled glass kind of vocal. But you can make out what especially on like the singles, if you like Ace of Spades or Eat the Rich or whatever, you can hear what he's singing very clearly.
Well, that stems from his previous bands. He was in Hawkwind where he sang, right. And before that was it the God, I can never remember the name of the band. There was a couple of them that he was in where they were much more traditional UK pop, UK invasion style bands.
So I'm curious about their place in the whole action rock like world, because I've heard of a ton of bands, even the ones that I've never heard. I've heard the names. Mm-hmm. I might have heard the records, but I've never heard them come up. Is it because they're on these tiny labels in Kentucky that they're not mentioned in like the same realm as, the Helicopters, Lucifer, Backyard Babies, that kind of thing?
Probably. And probably also because they're more tied to that Nashville pussy scene, which definitely is a band that got mentioned, but they weren't, and frankly, this album's kind of an outlier. As I recall, their other albums don't sound quite this much like a 70s hard rock record. So they weren't a band that nobody ever heard from again or talked about again, but they were definitely not at the level of like the big ones. Like on the American side, you have like Electric Frankenstein and the Bell Rays are kind of the biggest of those bands from that scene. But a lot of people I knew in and around the American side of that scene really digged this record and were fans of them as a band. And obviously you mentioned they have a whole lot of split 7-inches, which tells me there were a lot of other bands that were like, oh, this will go good with our sound and, crossing over with our fan base. And probably because it looks like they did take a hiatus as, especially Adam Neal went on to do other things.
Right. So I'm not even going to try to justify why this wasn't on the radio in 1999.
This should have been on maybe college radio. If you had a college radio station that had like a metal show or a hard rock show, and they had any of these songs that, weren't going to get flagged by the FCC, they could have been playing them next to Electric Frankenstein or Motorhead or, you were talking about thrash earlier. thrash always has had a very punk edge to it.
Mhm.
In a lot of ways, thrash is like the bastard child of both punk and metal. And you think about like Danzig the band, you think about Anthrax, you think about even Metallica or Slayer. All of those bands were huge fans of not just metal but punk. And
Right.
so that's where that's where a lot of the sound comes from.
Yeah, and I think that's what initially confused me, because I'm trying to rectify, this is a punk band, but this doesn't sound like punk. This sounds like a metal band,
Mhm.
but it's not quite metal because they're doing things that are not metal enough. Are you metal enough? Not quite.
But that
Hookers.
typified, I think, most of the bands in this sort of sound and genre.
Yeah.
They just put it together. Each band put it together in a different way, but it was still like, you know, a late 70s album collection with a couple like punk records mixed in from the early 80s. And you sort of put that in a blender and, you know, hundreds of different combinations can come out, but it's essentially the same ingredients.
So of the big four Scandinavian bands, being Helicopters, Glucifer, Turbo Negro, and the Flaming Sideburns, this is definitely more the Glucifer, Turbo Negro side of things rather than Helicopters and Flaming Sideburns.
Yeah.
Got it.
Turbo Negro comes up as the next song whenever I let this play out. So every time it's a different song, but it's always them.
That's interesting, because when I looked up like crossover thrash, like none of those bands that we just talked about come up. It's like DRI and Cro-Mags and Biohazard, Agnostic Front. Then these are bands. None of these bands I've checked out. I know the name. I know all those names, but I haven't checked them. SOD. I know the name. Never listened to them. Who else is on here that
SOD, I believe, is a side project of some of the members of Anthrax.
Yes.
Yep.
And is it one of the guys from Corrosion of Conformity, maybe? Or am I thinking of a different band?
It might.
You might be right.
So let's get to our overall ratings on this record. The album, better EP, or decent single? We'll share the results of the poll momentarily. Jay, where do you land?
There's stronger and weaker material on here, but they did the right thing by making this a short burst of energy. Like this, barely 30 minutes, and that's exactly what this kind of record should be. Has no business getting over that, and we've reviewed many other records where they overstay their welcome. I think this band, it sounds like on this record, they know the statement they want to make. They got a handful of songs to do it. They plug it in and let it rip. So I think based on that, I'm going to go with a worthy album. I mean, it's over so fast, and it's all so cohesive. It's hard to whittle it down to an EP and have it be any more meaningful than just what's there on the full 30 minutes. So ride the dragon to the crimson light. Not my favorite song. I'm not sure about the little psychedelic guitar solo during Cold Funeral Mountain. It sounds a little too Iron Butterfly, but whatever. It's like middle of the record. It's sort of a nice little change up. But I can nitpick here and there, but I think it's a pretty fun slice of energy. So I'm going to go for worthy album.
It was the first ever Iron Butterfly reference on this podcast.
I mean, it's
pretty
legit straight up. I think
Oh yeah, I
riff
know what
off
you're
of
talking
one of their
about.
guitar solos.
Yeah. I feel like this is a polarizing record in terms of like you either gonna turn this on and go yes and throw the horns and rock out, or you're gonna be like fuck no. And I think the comments that we got on Patreon pretty much bear that out. I'm at a worthy album. I put this on, and so many times it ended. I was like, wait a minute, didn't I just put that on? And it just goes by so fast. Now, I did not listen to this over and over again. I did take breaks because even though it's short, it's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
But there is definitely a mood for this record, and it fills the bill quite well. So worthy album for me.
It's good dragging in the middle of the day. You just pop this on for 30 minutes and it's like a shot of caffeine.
Mm-hmm. Eric.
Oh, it's easily a worthy album. Looking at it in the context of what kind of a record this is and what kind of record it's wanting to be, it knows exactly what it is, and it does exactly what it's meant to do. I totally agree that it doesn't overstay its welcome. Anytime that it drags you on to the next thing, that the energy is really what's there. And thinking about it as far as other 90s records, or especially songs that kind of this album reminds me of, in a lot of ways it feels like Black Sunshine by White Zombie. It's got that same kind of like drive, and obviously Rob Zombie's vocals in that era were not quite this rough, but we're definitely in the same kind of yell / bellowing. So if you got the muscle car, you're in the garage or whatever, and yeah, you need something to get you moving, this will definitely do it.
Well, our patrons shook out 63% worthy album, 38% decent single. There were no better EPs.
Oh yeah. I think that's what we're saying. Like, it doesn't make sense. Either you're in or you're out. There's no sense in like editing it down and like messing around with it.
So I'm going to call out one person who I want to know what they thought of this record, and that's Chip. I want to know what Chip thought of this record.
Chip,
all right,
you're on notice.
We expect a full report in Discord.
Yeah, and this is on Bandcamp. You can go to the Hookers Bandcamp page, and they have their releases on there. And I think it's most of their albums. I don't think all the singles are on there. They might have been collected. But they also have you can buy t-shirts, and looks like there might be even some vinyl for purchase on their website as well. So if you want a shirt that says Hookers on it, there you go. But that's pair of worthy albums for Black Visions of Wisdom.
Black Visions of Crimson
Wisdom. Yeah.
That's not on Apple Music. The word Crimson is not in there.
It's also not on Amazon. They must have not typed it in. They forgot to type Crimson. But it's on the album cover.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at the two side by side. I can see it in the album cover, but not in the actual title.
Also on the album cover, there's like these two lines after Hookers, and some places have it listed as Hookers 2 Roman numeral 1s, as if it's like Hookers 2.
Because their second full-length album, as I recall.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nifty, but makes it confusing for the...
Yeah. Well, and the next one is not Hookers 3.
Okay. Come on. Let's be consistent, people. Eric, thank you for bringing this to us. This was an end of action thrash punk I didn't know existed. So this is new territory for me.
Something that you're interested in exploring more of?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what other. I mean, you mentioned Nashville Pussy, who I've heard, because they played Columbus a bunch of times.
Yeah,
when in the 2000s. Actually, one of I know they've gone through some lead singers. One of the lead singers was actually from Columbus, a guy named Johnny Wiles, who was in a band called the Barbed Wire Dolls, not the one from Pittsburgh. There was a different Barbed Wire Dolls from Columbus. and then he became the lead singer of Nashville Pussy for like, I don't know if he was on a record, but he definitely toured with them. So that was like kind of a big deal when they played here because he was the singer. I think they played Little Brothers. Might have been, yeah, it was like early 2000s. Anyway, if there's other bands, please put them in the Discord that are similar to this, and I'll go check them out because this is an interesting.
So I'll just shout out one of them for the listeners, and that's a Canadian band called the Cripple Creek Fairies. Same kind of like high energy groove metal, I guess you could call it. Yeah, that's they're a little more on the boogie side than the Hookers, but that's another band I think of as being in this space. Also, I mentioned it earlier, there was a series of compilations called A Fistful of Rock and Roll. There's 13 volumes, and the plan was they were going to release one a month starting in January of 1999, and the 13th one would come out in January, February of 2000, and it was supposed to be a snapshot of rock and roll worldwide at that moment. I think they got the first 6 out, and then it fell apart. Eventually, they all did come out. But bands on these compilations are bands like we've mentioned, Glucifer, the Bell Rays, Electric Frankenstein. Sal from Electric Frankenstein's the one that put the compilations together. But there's a bunch of bands on there like the Gaza Strippers and Flaming Sideburns. They're well worth checking out for anybody that wants to explore kind of the breadth of the worldwide scene. There are compilations that are more location specific. The Ride on the Rocks and the Swedish Sins compilations are definitely more oriented towards Scandinavia, but the Fistful of Rock compilations are well worth checking out.
The Gaza Strippers. There's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
I saw them.
Yeah, I remember that.
They opened for the Helicopters.
Yeah.
That's
like
right.
Zen Gorilla's there. Zeke is on there. The Super Suckers. I mean, the list just goes on and on. You'll recognize it probably about a third of the band names, and then the rest are, bands that never made it anywhere else, or, existed for a little while or just faded away.
That's a name I have not heard in a very long time. Eric, thank you for bringing this to us. This was a lot of fun.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And if you listening to this would like to be like Eric, you can join us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com to vote in polls like the ones for this episode or our monthly album tournament polls. As we speak right now, there is a super close race in the final. 4 great picks, back and forth. It's going every day. Who knows what's going to happen with that? I think there's a couple days left in that poll, and you could be the deciding vote on whether we review. I think it's like Pulp and the Lemonheads and Ruby, and I don't remember who the fourth one was, but it was a good one. It was like all really good records in the for the 4 finalists. And that's done by suggesting records at digmeoutpodcast.com. You can suggest both for our 90s rock podcast and for the 80s metal podcast that comes out every other week that we launched this year. First couple episodes have gone up. Tesla, Yngwie Malmsteen, and I believe the Bang Tango episode just went up as well. Not when we're recording this, but by the time this comes out. There's that gap.
By tomorrow morning, yes.
Yes. Which will be last week by the time this comes out. You can go to Substack to get our newsletter, which comes out frequently. On the weekends, you get new releases of music, books, documentaries, etc., relevant to 80s, 90s, and aughts music. And then also there are history of the bands that are in the polls. That's where you can find the 80s metal podcast. And lastly, Apple Podcasts is where you go if you want to leave positive feedback for this show. So for Jay, I'm Tim. We're out. We'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.